In 2024, I was named Forbes 30 Under 30 for e-commerce. And in today's video, I want to break down how it happened, how it's been beneficial to me, what I've learned, and why making the Forbes list is a lot more than you expect.
I think Jordan Bentley
is like the biggest event.
Give y'all a round of applause. With today's video, I hope to share the journey of how I made the list, how you can make the list too, what you should think about if you're gonna apply for the list, and really how to benefit you overall. So please enjoy and let's jump right into it. All right, so first things first, the backstory. How did I hear about Forbes? Well, I first heard about Forbes Under 30, I think when I was 21 years old. I didn't really know what Forbes Under 30 was. I just knew that it was a list of, I guess, accomplishments that people made, or a list of prestigious people that were successful in whatever space and industry. I assumed it was based on money, and that was like the main parameter for getting on the list. Fast forward to 2025, when I am now 28 years old and I've made the list, I found out that, you know, there's so much more to making the list, and that it is way more than just making money. It's PR and a bunch of other things that we'll talk about today that really make you a great candidate for the list, and really that people select folks that make the list on a bunch of different parameters. So did I ever believe I'd be on the list? So before I made the Forbes list, did I ever believe that I'd be on the list? Absolutely. Back in 2020, I think I tweeted that I would be on the list, or maybe even 2019. Back in 2019 or 2018, I remember I tweeted that I would get on the Forbes list before I turned 25. Fast forward, that didn't happen. I made it before I turned 27. But to answer that question, I absolutely thought I'd made the list. I've always been super goal-oriented, ambitious. I knew that my business was successful, and I knew that we would continue to see success. So I figured, why not try and get on this list? You know, a lot of my friends had made it that I help out. You know, I'm in a big community of like creative people. So I figured, I'm like, if this guy can make it, I definitely can. So a lot of people always ask, what stage was my brand at when I got nominated to the Forbes Under 30 list? The brand had done a ton already. You know, it was nominated back in 2022 and 23 at first. We made it for 24, meaning I was nominated in 23, I got on that list, and then we made the year following. But the brand had already been established. We had multiple employees. We had done numerous collaborations. We had sold literally over millions of units and t-shirts, hundreds of $1 million in garments. So the brand was progressed a little further along. But I say that to say, just because your brand may not be as far as Hypeland was when I applied or I got nominated doesn't mean that you can't do the same thing. There are a lot of steps and things that really contribute to why you do or don't make the list, and what goes into why people select you. So I guess the initial feeling. So going back to the day that I made the Forbes Under 30 list, I remember just being so excited. I felt like it was a dream come true because like I said, I remember tweeting on numerous occasions, like, I want to make this list. I want to be successful. I want this accomplishment. Really without understanding what it meant, but I just knew I wanted to be a part of that list. I felt like I'd always like wake up every year and think, before I even knew it was an application process, that I'd wake up one day and just scroll and my name would be there. So for me, like I said, making the list and getting nominated and having people just say, hey, look, like, Jordan's doing great things, he should be a part of this, for me was a dream come true, really, to be honest with you. I think that it's helped my business in numerous ways. It's helped my personal brand in numerous ways, and it really has helped shape my brand identity just overall in general. So first things first, how did I make the list, and what's that process like? So transparently, I think making the list is a combination of different things. You obviously have to have a successful business, but for me, someone nominated me. To my understanding, I think there are nominations that go out in the beginning of every year, where if you have a previous lister or an application online, you can kind of have someone from a PR agency to some notable figure or whatever nominate you for on there. And they just kind of ask you general questions. It's like, who is this person? What do they do? Why do you feel they're deserving to be on this list? You know, what category do you want to see them in this list for? For me, somebody nominated me for the e-commerce category. And like I said, that was back in 2023 when the brand had kind of already been having motion and steam. So for me, I made it through just like a general application process where someone said, hey, look, like, let's just throw kind of Jordan on this list. And fast forward, it ended up working out. Selected for the general nomination, they kind of wave you through another round of questions where they ask you a bit more about your business. You kind of jump on a couple different phone calls where you're talking to people that work on the board. They ask you questions to try to understand, you know, what accomplishments you've made. Having articles and PR and press is really helpful, because I think that a lot of times they look into the person as an individual beyond the business. You know, what has been reported about your brand? What have you done that's notable and newsworthy? What are people generally saying about your businesses, and like, how has it had, I guess, like, positive impact in the world? So for me, after you kind of go through that process, there is a just general interview and vetting process where the Forbes team team asks you a ton of different questions to get to know more about you. I assume they do this as like a just general vetting process to, like I said, just get a good understanding of like who and what is going to be on this list. So the thing that people ask, I guess kind of getting into this space also too, are what achievements and notable milestones did I have that helped me contribute to the list, and things that you can apply for yourself to get on the list also too. So I think the first things first for me that I learned is a lot of what helps you make this list is having like good PR. You need a lot of articles. For Hypeline in particular, I have a bunch of different brand articles from collaborations that we've done. Like when we've worked with Netflix, I have articles from that. I have news articles from local outlets from when we open up the store, when we do pop-ups in different cities. Whenever I've done interviews with, say, WGM or like some of these other media outlets and companies, those interviews and just information that people can kind of track back on to let people know that, or let the board know that you are a notable figure that is worthy of being on the list, is super important. I think what you have to keep in mind is that when people put you on this list, I think it really is for community building. I think that when they put you on the list, it's not so much about your accomplishments, but it really is like, it's like in addition to your accomplishments, it's like answering the question of, if this person comes into this community, like how are they gonna benefit as an individual, but also benefit the community more. It's like, how can they give back to the people that are on there already to I guess help them grow in their network, and then how do you make the list better for yourself? So to make it easier, like I said, you got to have a lot of press, you got to obviously have a successful business, you got to be some type of expert in the space that you want to be in. For me in particular, it was clothing. Like I said, when I applied, we had collaborations with the NBA already, Hello Kitty, we had done music festivals, concerts, sold millions of units. We had a ton of different press and PR articles that were out there. So figuring out who I was as Jordan Bentley was a shoe-in. On top of that, I had done some personal brand work with like, being on reality TV and like doing other entertainment things that just kind of added to the whole overall persona of Jordan as not just an entertainer, but a brand owner and someone who is worthy of being on the list and that really can contribute and pour into his other class members, While going through this process, a lot of people ask if there were surprises. I think the biggest surprise for me was finding out that it isn't just like a random selection, and there is a really thorough selection process that, one, everyone follows, but two, that a really thorough selection process that is a lot more than meets the eye. Like I said, I thought at first it was just purely based on financials, and I've made suggestions for friends that have had super serious businesses, but the reason why some of my friends haven't made it, and why I didn't make it in the past, was because I didn't have any articles that kind of supported the claims that I did. I feel like a lot of times, I've read articles where people will lie about their accomplishments to make the list, and whereas I understand why they do that, I just think that, one, it's wrong, but two, that's why they have such a tedious and really like stringent vetting process to really make sure that everybody gets on this list is, one, deserving, but two, can pour back into that community. So for me, I think the hardest process or the most surprising thing was just the amount of interviews and conversations you kind of have that lead up to this. It's almost like, it's like getting on the list, you kind of know before the public list comes out, but it's still exciting seeing the profile and everything. But getting on the list, for me at the very least, really was like super duper eye-opening, just because, like I said, there's so many processes that come into effect when you're getting on this journey. It's like all the interviews, all the questions, they ask you a lot of personal questions about your business, though a lot of them don't make it out in the public eye. They really want to know a lot of ins and outs about like you and like what makes you successful. So I think for me, like I said, that was the most surprising, because I assumed it was just like, hey, look, like take my word for this, but it's actually a lot deeper than what you would initially expect. So people, and I think that along with making the list, there are a ton of things that people, I guess that are wrong, and they think that there's a way to pay to be on the list. Now, for me, myself, I can't speak on the fact of paying for the list. I didn't pay for it. I don't even know if it's something that I would pay for myself in general, but I think that the biggest misconception is that you could just pay and you can just make it based on like having no merit and just having good PR. I think good PR is very important to get you into the door, but I think once they start doing the vetting process, it's very difficult to navigate that if you aren't actually doing things in business. To that same end, I think that the notion of the fact that you might have to pay to be on this list is, to me, kind of crazy, because I don't think that in most cases you really benefit directly monetarily at first. So paying for something like this, to me, like I said, not something that I would do, but I think that there's just this misconception that if you're popular or you have money or good PR or something like that that you can get on there, but it really isn't the case. And on the same end, I think that another misconception I see a lot too is that you have to have this mega grand business. I know people who have had great ideas that really have just made the list from like raising, or have just demonstrated that they're smart and they've made the list. So I think that, you know, you can make it at all levels. It just really depends on, one, how well-rounded you are, how smart you are, how much whoever's interviewing you believes in you and just kind of sees you through that process. I think that was probably like the big surprise. Just one, the amount of interviews and work that kind of go into it, but two, the level of people there. Because I think that there are a lot of people who are really accomplished. There are people who are just kind of getting started, and there are people who have done a lot of different things, but there are tons of different levels of people that are on this list that you can really meet and just add into your network. So kind of taking a step back to the day I made the list. How did I feel? So like I said before, when you make the list, you kind of know before you make it. The public listing day though is honestly, it's like a dream come true. I feel like I just remember that day when everybody was sending me screenshots of making the list, the accomplishments that kind of came with that. People assuming, you know, I feel like people assume when you make the Forbes list that you are ultra rich and like just this upper echelon of people. And that's the case for some people, but it's not always the case for everybody. But I know when I made the list, my family was super excited. It just felt like I had accomplished something really deep in my life, and I felt like that was a very big moment for just external validation and like letting people see like, hey, you know, this guy means serious business and he's getting it done. You know, this guy is doing the necessary work and is in the right places and doing the right thing. So I feel like, I don't know, being under the Forbes list is very validating. It also brought me into like a new sense of community, so I felt like my life would change. I didn't think that, you know, making the list would just all of a sudden make me a different person overnight. I knew that, you know, I would still have to do the hard work and all the things that got me to that point would still have to be done, but it was like a nice trophy and it allowed me to be present and just have gratitude for the position that I was in at the time. So for me, like I said, I think it was like a good validating moment. My family was really excited. They're all deep in business. I think they're a little older too, so they really understood the impact a bit more. You know, it was, like I said, it was a good overall experience, and it was like surprising, not just for me, but for my family, for everybody. It was like, man, like it's almost like a culmination moment. Imagine working hard your entire life to graduate college and you finally do it and you turn that tassel on the other side. That's what it felt like to make that list, where it's like, man, you've been working hard and you finally like make this list. And though it's only one of many that I'll make in my lifetime, it felt like, wow, my efforts are being appreciated and they're seen. The next thing I thought about when I made the list was the amount of pressure or validation or just internal thoughts that came as a result of making it. I feel like, you know, I've heard this before, but there's supposed to be like this thing called like the Forbes curse, where you make it and like people just do heinous financial crimes and all these just different things. But I felt like there was a bit of a pressure that kind of came with that. Because one, like I said, whenever you make this Forbes list, I feel like people automatically that don't understand the magnitude of it or what it means assume that it means you just have a bunch of money. And like I said, whereas that's the case for some people, it's not the case for everyone. So I felt like, one, for me, that there was this subconscious pressure to become more successful, to like fit in that void where it's like, you know, I'm in this space, I need to do more and be more excellent and make more, so that way I feel like I belong in the room. On that same end, I think that the next pressure the next pressure that came from making the list was after I got to, I think, the Forbes conference and began to meet other people that were on the list. It kind of puts in perspective on like how amazing some people are and how there are different ranges of people. But I think that the pressure that I felt from being on the list after meeting all those people was that after making the list and then meeting people of all the different like ranges and success levels, was that I needed to get myself together and constantly be pushing myself. I think that when you get to these conventions and you meet the people that are on the list and peers of yours, it kind of puts in perspective of like, one, how successful some people are, you know, what people's backgrounds are like. And I think for me, it's like really motivating, and it makes you want to do better and like learn more and like be in these powerful spaces and just take advantage of the relationships that you can. You know, but I don't think there was any internal pressure. I just felt like for me, like what got me there, I would continue to do, and like, you know, I would just continue to uphold the standards of the business that allowed me to be in that space in the first place. So I don't know, I didn't feel any out front pressure. I think it was really like some relief, But I think that on the same end, now that you're a part of this community, you almost feel this personal goal to be like even better because you're now on the list and it's like I feel like everything you do afterwards is like underneath a magnifying glass or a fine tooth comb, where it's like if you fail, it's like you're the guy from Forbes that failed, and nobody wants to be that guy. Obviously, as you can imagine, there are a ton of benefits that come with the list, and I'll kind of outline some of them. The first things first is credibility. For me, I think that it's very important to brand yourself outside of just being a business owner. I think that being on the Forbes list, because they mention the founders, it gives you that personal credibility as like your individual self to say, hey, this person knows what they're doing in business. So for me, it was like, wow, nice little validation moment outside of Hypeland. It's like it kind of separates the business owner and the business from each other, but allows you to, still be successful and still be present. Outside of that, I think the biggest takeaway that I have from benefits are the network of people. In the New York video, I talk about how I've made new friends, and the friends that I've made in New York City have literally all come as a result of being on the list. I think that it's not so much about financial or accomplishments that make my friends great from this community, but it really is it really comes down to the amount of values and how we carry ourselves in life, and the different things that contribute to who we are as individuals that make us stand out and that make us aligned. I think that when you get on this list, you just get introduced to a world of people that know a ton of different things, whether it be somebody that's in your respective industry, whether it be someone that's in an adjacent industry, whether it be someone that is in a space that's completely separate of yours. I think that everyone that's in this space is super smart and knowledgeable, and they all possess resources that you can learn from one another. And I think that the most powerful thing with the relationship building piece too is you can inspire but also learn from people who are just like you, and everyone's your same age. So I find that the ambition level or just the work ethic and all these different things, it's pretty synonymous across all of these different groups of people, just because it's hey, we all know what it's like to have those hard, long nights. We all know what it's like to run a business. We all know what it's like to put our head down. I feel like everyone understands the amount of sacrifice that's necessary to be successful in those spaces. And as a result of it, you get people who are a lot more equally yoked and have the same values of you a lot of the time. My mentor used to always say, it's you want to find friends that understand the importance of a down payment. And he wasn't talking literally in the sense of the importance of buying a house, but more so on the principle of working hard, sacrificing for something, and laying it all on the line to make some type of accomplishment. And in the case of the Forbes list, it's all these people have had the long nights, they've had the woes of the business, I'm sure they've had their woes with the employees, they've had their lessons that they've learned, and as a result of it, they have succeeded and overcame, and as a result they have some very similar values and life experiences that all can be shared across the entire journey. So in addition to the community that you get, networking is also really powerful. For me, I think that the friendship piece is one thing, because I have friends that are all on the list that have very similar values as I do, so I find that it's really easy. But I think that Forbes offers a lot of networking opportunity and events for you to meet other listers and people just in their general network as a result of being a part of this community. There's the under 30 conferences where there are people who are young just like you. There are the Forbes Black conferences that have leaders in these different spaces. There is there's just a ton of different events and things that you can take advantage of and meet people at, and just be like I said, just be present and learn from people. I think that the Forbes under 30 community is really going to an Ivy League school. You go to these different rooms and these meetings, and everyone there is an Ivy League student, honestly, or an ex-founder, or they just have some type of great relationships. And it's it really puts you in that upper echelon of the room, and you get to, like I said, just be a participant in these spaces. And it makes it easier to meet people. It makes it easier to learn from folks. It makes it easier to break down that first wall, and it kind of puts you aligned. I think on the same end, like I said, it gives you credibility. The credibility is a big thing too, because being able to tell somebody, hey, I'm Forbes under 30, you already know what that comes with. But then on the same end, it's like I said, you automatically get introduced into certain rooms that you may not have before. It's if you're young and successful, I feel there's always people that will look down on you a little bit for your age, but if you're young and successful but you have that Forbes thing in your handle, it's okay, he's not just a young business guy that got lucky. He's smart and he's been validated by these things. Unfortunately, we live in a world where people do need that validation sometimes. So having that, that title next to your thing just opens up other doors from you. And I think that it really like gives people the confidence to understand like, hey, like this person is like really smart. This person is someone that they can learn from. This person is someone that I can trust through my process and like learn a bit more, So obviously, making the list is a huge thing, but there are some lessons that I've learned as a result of making the list and some things that I'd love to share with you guys. So the first things first is that I want to keep in mind that I think it's important to have gratitude and celebrate your wins and to be present in your moments that are like high milestones, but these achievements are not the end goal. They are literally just milestones and like stops on the way to your greater goals. I think that oftentimes what happens when you make things like Forbes is you feel like your life is going to change all of a sudden, and maybe that you can take your foot off the gas, or that things will all of a sudden shift in like a different paradigm just because you made some list. I'm going to be the first person to tell you that that's not true. I think that making these lists, it just makes you a little more powerful, but in order to continue to grow, you have to continue to work out. It's just like any muscle or any skill or anything that you're doing, you have to give it constant attention if you want it to grow. I would say, if I had to put an analogy, I would say like getting the Forbes list for a business owner is like getting good fertilizer for a plant. It's like the plant, you have to still tend to it, you have to still care for it, you have to still water it, you have to still make sure it's getting the sunlight, and you have to still tend to your crop. But getting good little bit of fertilizer might make it grow a little faster. You might get some more seeds and you might sprout a little further. You may get other opportunities that as a result of this stuff. But it isn't, like I said, making these types of lists is not, or are not, the end goal. That's not, you don't start business to just be like, hey, I'm gonna make Forbes, and like once you make that, that's it. Now you just stop doing business. It's like, it's supposed to be just used as motivation to add some extra fuel to your fire and like keep your momentum like rolling. Getting that external validation is great, but it doesn't extinguish the internal fire that you have to have. I think that, like I said, external validation is great because it opens tons of doors and opportunities, but you really at the end of the day have to still make sure that you are the same person that got you on the list. What got you on the list is what's going to keep you on the list. And really, kind of like people say all the time, it's like the easy part is getting it, the hard part is keeping it. It's like, what do you do like once you've made that? How do you utilize the relationships and people that you meet in this space, or the learnings that you've had from being in this space, to now like grow even more? Like I said, it's like fertilizer. It opens the door for a new plant shop. You get more plants to make your nursery bigger, but at the end of the day, you still have to water your plants and make sure you're doing the right things to consistently grow. So for me, like I said, it's not that external validation is great, but it doesn't replace discipline. And I think that, at the end of the day, like you still have to have discipline. You still have to be focused. You still have to really keep your end goal in mind at all times when it comes to making the list. It's like one thing, I think like a lot of time what people experience is like you work super hard to make this moment, you make the moment, and you just kind of like plateau afterwards. You have to think to yourself like, wow, I made this moment and I'm doing something right, but let me keep my foot on the gas so that way we can make it up the hill, because if I stop right here, I'll end up rolling backwards. You want to make sure you get to the top of the peak before you say, hey, this is exactly what I've like worked towards, and just stop. You never want to stop the momentum. Nothing replaces that ever. So, and then I think on the same end, it's like, to kind of put in that same context, it's like the real work is what got you on the list in the first place. It's like not being on the list itself. It's like I said, you have to channel that inner hustler, that inner focused person, that inner like dog, and really just make sure you continue to be that. Because being on the list is only as good as you make it. Being on the list is only as good as you can accomplish things. Being on the list is only as good as you can take advantage of the relationships and just continue to navigate in these spaces, and I think that you become more valuable when you continue to be the person that got you there. I think that if you stop and you slack off, then you become a lot less valuable, regardless if you're on the list or not. I think at the end of the day, we live in a very transactional world, and no matter if you're on a list or not, you still have to provide some kind of value or change some people's life. Your content still has to be good. The product you make, it still has to be good. People are not just gonna buy it because you're on some mystery list. It's like you gotta do the work. It's like, yes, it opens more doors, but you still have to run. You know what I'm saying? It's like being on Forbes is like a key. It just opens another lock, but you still gotta turn the doorknob, or walk through the door if you want to take advantage. I guess on that same end, I really just want to emphasize that you have to really stay grounded after the recognition. I think that, I've kind of beat this point down a billion times, but like I said, staying resilient, staying focused, and staying in the mud that got you there is what will keep you there and what will open up other opportunities. Don't just let this one milestone be the have all end all for you, and you slow up your momentum and end up missing out on things in the future. You know, like I said, it's one thing to celebrate the wins and enjoy them and be present, but on the same end, after you have that gratitude, you got to make sure you get back to the next game. It's like what Kobe says all the time. It's like, you know, once this game's over, the next point or the next game is what matters the most. I mean, Nadal says it all the time while he's a great tennis player, or Roger Federer says it all the time while he's a great tennis player. It's like there's nothing more important than this next point. It's like you had your win, loss, whatever. You have this next win, boom, make sure you get back onto the horse and keep trotting. So last thing I'll touch on is just like common misconceptions, and I kind of touched on this briefly, but first thing is like you have to be rich to get on a list. That's not true. You don't have to be rich, and you can't pay to get on a list. I'm sure there are some people that are that way, like I keep saying. I've met some folks that are like uber successful, but you do not have to be rich to be on this list. Also on the same end too, another misconception is that if you're not on the list that you're not successful. I know a lot of people that choose not to be on the list that are like more successful than people that I've ever known, honestly. And you know, like I said, at the end of the day, it's all just press and PR. You don't want to get too caught up in the fact that, you know, you get on this thing and make it your whole identity, when really there's a lot more that goes into that. You know, the next misconception that I kind of touched on too is that everything changes overnight. It's not true. Like I said, it opens other opportunities for you. You may, you know, you get introduced to a bunch of different people, but at the end of the day, you still have to do the work. You still have to do what got you there. You still have to maintain relationships. Like I said, it just opens up your mind to a new community and you to a new space. But if you don't take advantage of those spaces, then you might as well have not been on the list in the first place, because nothing is just gonna happen because you've been on the list. You know, the next thing I want to talk about too is like the fact that it's not only about money. I think that I've seen there's a ton of different categories on the Forbes list, ranging from entertainment to e-commerce to sales to just business, technology, and there are a lot more parameters that go into like why you can make the list. You could be, you know, socially impactful, you can have a great community, you can be really popular, you can be really influential. There's a ton of different reasons why you can make the list, and the Forbes list is not just about money. It's about impact and community, and just like really benefiting the, I guess, community members like you overall. It's like, you know, you can sell a lot, but making a lot of money doesn't make you qualify for being on that list. It doesn't mean that you'll add anything. It's like, it goes into the same perspective I say all the time. It's like, who are you, and like, how does them having you in there make the list better? How does you being you make you more successful or qualified than someone else? Or like, you know, what separates you by being you? You know what I'm saying? I think there's a lot that goes into, there are a lot of things that go into that make the list beyond money, and money is not the ultimate end all, at least for, you know, success as it relates to the Forbes list in particular. Really, I guess if I had to say anything, it's like what really makes a list, if I had to just debunk anything, is the truth is that the list is about your story, you know, the impact that you've had, and how will that last overall. It's like, what's your story? What's your unique point of view? What have you done to change the world? If it's been success, it's like, what has that story and journey been like? You know, what impact have you had on people, your community, your customers, you know, the industry that you're in? You know, what does that impact look like? And then really, how is it gonna last? You know, where are you going to be at in the next couple of years? Is it scalable? Is this a one-time thing? Were you just like the guy that got lucky? You know, how are you able to scale and maintain this beyond just your current experience? I think there's a lot of things that go into that, but the main thing that I can say, if I had to surmise it, it's not about money, but it's about overall lasting impact and like your personal story of like why and who you are. Really is the fact that I think making the list really goes into timing also too. I think that every dog has its day, but I think that there's certain opportunities that shine a bit better depending upon the times that you apply. So you got to keep that in mind. It's like, maybe you might be successful, but it hasn't been the time for that yet. Maybe there's something that'll go on in the world that'll just kind of push your accomplishments in the limelight and get you into that room. You know, it's all about timing, all about being patient. It's all about putting yourself to be present in these spaces and just being able to take advantage and really shine your light. So to recap, and just to kind of end everything for everybody, the Forbes list is great and it can really be life-changing, but I want to remind you guys that the thing that makes you the list is what's going to keep you on there. And it really isn't so much about the milestone itself. It's really about celebrating these big wins, but making sure you maintain the things that got you there in the first place. You know, like I said, it's important to have gratitude. It's important to slow down. It's important to celebrate these moments, and it's important to have this PR and just take advantage of the open doors. But at the end of the day, until you really dial in and continue to do the work, that it doesn't matter what list you get on, because it's not going to be something that you're you're able to take advantage of or see as successful. You know, if you really want to be great, you know, like I said, make sure you do the hard work to get on there. Make sure you put yourself out there. Make sure you have some kind of impact, and that'll get you on the list. But once you get in the room, make sure you do the things that got you in the room in the first place. Make sure you network. Make sure you find like-minded individuals. Make sure you connect with people. Make sure you see how you can benefit others and have an impact on their life. Make sure you figure out who you can teach things and learn things from. The list is only as good as you make it. So if you make it, then go ahead and take advantage of it. I think if I had to walk away with anything, if I had to walk away with any kind of advice, my advice to you, if you wanted to make the list, would be like, focus on the impact and not just always the dollars. I think that, you know, making money is easy, but I think that having some kind of impact is difficult and can be really hard. So make sure you focus on that a bit more for yourself. On that same end, you know, make sure that you really focus on, like I said, taking advantage of the relationships and doing the hard work. Even if you don't make the list or you haven't made the list before, that doesn't mean that you should stop doing what you're going to do. I mean, it's only 30 people in each category. You know, you got to make sure you excel, and that's why I say it's about timing always. So make sure you just kind of like take advantage of that as much as you can. And then on the same end, and to figure out, just remember the journey is more important than the title. I think that, you know, it's like they say in the Bible, you know, you got to pay attention to the journey, not so much the destination, and enjoy the process that got you there if you really want to be successful. So yeah, man, I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you like and comment. If you want to be on the list or make on the list, then, you know, let me know what category you're thinking about doing. If you have any questions about it, I can pull out some resources. I'm happy to do so. But yeah, man, keep a lookout. I think the applications go out every year in September after the current year gets announced. So make sure you join up, and I'll see you guys all there. Peace.